Okay, we are live. I'm just waiting to see people start to join. We are a couple of minutes early. Yes, look, I'm seeing people coming in now. Some keen people are joining us. So I'm just
wonderful.
Yes, welcome to this this webinar about LCFM native. I am here with Kevin Miller, our CEO.
Hi there.
Yeah, and Mark Waddingham, our Chief Technical Officer. He's here to take your technical questions. And I'm just going to give everybody a couple of minutes to join us. So welcome. Do feel free to type in the chat, introduce yourselves, tell us where you're from. It's always great to see who's joining us and where in the world you are. As you probably know, we are in the UK, and Kevin is in Edinburgh, Mark is in Glasgow, and I personally am in Wales. We're all working remotely due to this little pandemic that we have ongoing. Hi Marek, good to see you. Where are you in the world? And Brian. Carsten in Switzerland.
Hope the weather's better there than here.
Yeah, it's been a bit rough here. Bruce in Australia. Now that is heroic, Bruce, because it's the middle of the night in Australia, so that's dedication. Patrick in Ipswich, so he's suffering from the same weather. Canada, San Francisco, is great to see you all. Yeah, it's wonderful. Vietnam, even. I love seeing how, Lebanon, everybody is, all around the world, literally. So that is really cool. Just going to give people another minute or two. We're on the hour now, and then we're going to get started. So, Erwin in Switzerland, there's a couple of Swiss people here. Oh, quite a few Swiss people, in fact. Ian in Scotland, just down the road. Latvia. It's cool. It's great.
Melbourne, Australia, 2 a.m. That's dedicated.
Another dedicated. I mean, it's just, yeah. So, yeah. Okay. Paul in Devon. Oh, and somebody, look, Junior Portillo is in Cuba. So, it's awesome. Okay, all right then. So what we're going to do is, earlier today, Kevin has prepared a demo for you. So I'm just going to set that running. And then after that has
showing you what you can do with our brand new edition of LCFM, Ben Lui. For those of you that are wondering, Ben Lui is a Munro Mountain in the lower parts of the Highlands here in our native Scotland. We'll be naming our releases after mountains in order to make them more distinctive. We're super excited about this release and I have a ton of things to show you. I'll be giving you a demo of your brand new app building experience, showing an app running on Mac and on Android. I'll be discussing the different routes that we now have for you to get started, including a new way to get going with the platform. We also have an interview with a successful customer who can tell you all about what they've been doing with LCFM Native and why they chose it. And I even have a sneak peek of our upcoming web deployment option. Now, please do put questions into the question box as we go, and we'll come back and answer those at the end. You may be aware we're running a free prize drawing for a brand new Samsung Galaxy Tab S6. It's a $650 top quality Android tablet. It has a magnetic S Pen, which charges automatically when it's attached to the back of the device. It has a Super AMOLED 10.5-inch display, a fast processor, and I think it's an amazing device to get started with your Android journey.
just imagine your FileMaker apps running beautifully on this screen. Well, someone listening to this webinar is going to win it here today. In order to take part in the drawing, you will have to be paying attention. At some point in the webinar, I'm going to come back to this screen and I'm going to put up a link to enter the drawing. You will have just 5 minutes to complete that process, and I'll be announcing the lucky winner at the end after the question and answer session. If you miss the announcement and the link, then you will not be entered into the draw, so keep a lookout for it. Before we get started with the demo, I just want to recap on the core benefits of the LCFM platform for your customers. This is about making a richer, more professional app experience that is in line with what today's clients, today's customers really expect from their apps. So I wonder, do your clients expect any of these? Or could you get new clients who do have these expectations who you're currently not able to serve? So here is the list. My app needs to work on all platforms. Android is 86% of the mobile market, so this is a fair expectation. I love my Apple product, but I need my apps to run on the devices that my customers have. My app needs to work on whatever devices I have, including on a range of inexpensive devices. It's worth noting that Android is actually half of the high-end market for mobile devices in the United States. But worldwide, if we start to look at the more inexpensive devices and the lower end devices, it is pretty much the entirety of that market. We have one client, for example, who's aiming to deploy a large-scale solution in the developing world, and they really need to be able to use entry-level Android devices. My app needs to be in the App Store or the Play Store. Many clients do expect their own app with an icon in the store. So, is it really the best experience to produce that app and to have the customer download Go and run it, or have to install FileMaker on your desktop in order to be able to run it? LCFM Native produces standalone applications, a bit like the runtime on Mac, for example, but also obviously on iOS and on Android. And just worth noting, I've said it before, but it is easier on Android. You do not have to go through the store in the same way that you do on iOS. It is less of a walled garden, and you can you distribute those apps directly to people as well as putting them into the store. Either way, we really do believe that is a more professional experience. My app works with and without an internet connection. And if you look at all of the top apps in the two different app stores, there really is that expectation. The ones that are well rated do work well offline, and they pick back up and then they send the data when they get a connection. With LCFM, you have a full range of syncing options to allow you to do just that. And my app works the way I expect it to. It does that by supporting native OS features and APIs. So whether that is taking pictures or recording audio or taking barcodes or location tracking, these are all features that are expected, together, of course, with access to any other part of the operating system or API that you might need. So LCFM is a lot more than just a simple way of deploying your app to Android. It is a way of building a more professional app experience and an experience that your clients expect on any of the platforms that we support, not just on Android. I'm now going to give you a demo of the all-new Ben Lui with the new user experience and their free trial. So let's switch over and take a look. I'm going to load up LCFM Native. This is the new Ben Lui edition. You can get yourself a 7-day free trial of this on our website. And the trial comes with only the fast start mode, so regular start isn't available in the trial. And that lets you create apps for Mac or for Android without having to install any additional software. And it doesn't have the online-offline syncing options that's available in the full version. We'll start off by dropping our FileMaker solution in to begin, and I'm just going to drop in one of the sample solutions, sample assets. And I'm going to enter my FileMaker admin username and password for this solution. It's important that you enter the full access username and password here, as we do need access to everything in your solution in order to be able to compile it. put in the name assets for my project. So we go into the compile mode now, and LCFM starts to drive FileMaker. You'll see in the top right of my screen, there is a little popover there which says that LCFM native is at work and not to touch anything while it's running. We've reduced the amount of time that this screen is up for now. It's only there for the first minute or so of the compile process, just as we go into FileMaker and export one or two things that we need. After that, the whole compile process takes place just inside the LCFM native tool, which means that if it was a larger solution and it was going to take a few minutes to compile, then you could leave it in the background. So we just have to wait a moment for this screen to disappear. It's gone now. So at this point, it's now safe just to go off and do something else if you're waiting for a larger compile. However, this is quite a small project and it's not going to take very long, just a few seconds hopefully. We'll go through and get all of the different layouts. We can see it working through them there, and it's now going to bring up the feature implementation report, which tells us how complete our solution is. So here we can see that this sample solution is 92% feature complete. And it's worth pointing out that if there are unimplemented or partially implemented features, you can use our Android build service or our app partner service to get those over the line more quickly. But we are constantly adding more features and more support. So let's have a look at what is and isn't working in this. So in the first section, we have unsupported features. And these are features that aren't implemented, and we're not planning to implement them. There aren't very many things in this category, but if you look at it, you'll see that it makes sense. So there is a script step used in the about for this sample solution to open the script workspace. Well, clearly that doesn't make any sense in a deployed app. It wouldn't work in Go either. So it's not something that LCFM native is going to support. There's also a script step here to open help, and again, that's not something that makes sense in deployment. We then have not currently supported features, and these are things that are coming soon. And it's the show and hide toolbar script step, and that's the ability to show that little navigation chrome that you get in Go to navigate around your solution. So at the moment, you need to make sure that your solution has all of the navigation features that it needs within it, but we are planning to add support for that relatively soon. You can then see partially implemented features. They're mostly working, but if you're using some of the less common variants, then it might affect your solution. Generally speaking, the things on the partially implemented features list aren't likely to have a big impact, but we do list them just in case there's something that has an impact. So we enter preview mode script step. There is a little limitation there, and there's a little section at the end of the report that tells you more. Import records with dialog is only supporting comma separated values. You can't import from other FileMaker files. A couple of limitations on the form that you can use for Go related windows or new window script steps. So mostly complete, but just some minor potential limitations. Then a list of features that have been implemented with differences. These are very unlikely to affect your solution, but again, we just list them out. For example, get device can also now return Android, and so forth. Then cosmetic features, so we don't have set zoom level implemented just yet. If you want more information or you want to work with us to get us, to understand what it would take to get anything that's missing done as a priority, you can save out this report. And if I save out that, it's an HTML file, and you can see that it has the full details. But it also has this handy little section at the end that just tells you a little bit more detail about anything that may not be implemented in your solution. Okay, so we can press continue on this. It'll extract the data, it'll build our database, and we now have an option to build our app for Android or for Mac. And I recommend, actually, as much as your interest might primarily be around Android, I would recommend building it for Mac first. So building for Mac creates a standalone Mac application, a bit like the runtime capability that's no longer in FileMaker. And the reason to test this is that the implementation that we've used underneath the hood for both Android and Mac is almost identical. So if your LCFM app is running well on Mac, then it's probably going to run well on Android as well. So we're ready to test the Mac desktop app, and in just a few seconds later, it will pop up and show us that app. And here we have the sample assets application. It's running on Mac. It's got some data in it because I built this previously on the Mac, so it's retained that data between the builds. We have a list of assets here. I can go and navigate exactly as I would expect. It's all looking good, and you can go through obviously and spend a bit more time looking at it to see, but it's a fairly full implementation here that's running quite smoothly and quite well. Okay, so having tested your Mac app, let us go and build one for Android. So I'm going to go into deployment options for my project that I just created. I'm going to add a new profile, and here I'm going to add Android. As I said earlier, iOS isn't actually available in the demo version. I'm using the full version of the tools I'm giving you this demo. You could choose to build for phone or tablets, and that will help to select the layout that you want to use if you've got different layouts built into your solutions. And I happen to know that we need the camera because sample assets takes photos, microphone because we can record audio, and barcode scanning. All three of those features are in. But sample assets doesn't use location, so I'll not turn that one on. I'm also going to turn on all of the different device orientations because they all work just fine in this app. And then I am going to test on my Android device. So in order to do that, I need to turn on the developer options in my Android device, which I have already done. And if you've got any questions on how to do that, then there is a lesson on our website, and I think the tool will actually just pop it up in this process if it finds those permissions haven't been set. So I'm going to press deploy an Android device, and I've just plugged my device in using my USB-C cable. And it comes up and asks me to confirm the target device that's connected, and gives me a list of recommended devices. So there's a bit more information here about what we recommend in terms of an Android device. I'm just going to say that it's supported and press continue. And it will now pop the app up on the device. So let's switch over to the device and see how it is running. This is my Android device, and it asks, first of all, do I want to allow USB debugging? I'll turn that on. In fact, I'm going to say always allow, so I don't keep getting that dialog popping up. In a second or two, the app will pop up. There we go. And asks the permission to access photos and media. I'll just say allow to that. So here's the app, and you can see a sample asset running in the mobile layout, just as you would expect. Can go into one of the layouts and I'll see that it's got some data that I saved before. So there's a screenshot in there that I took earlier. Scrolling flawlessly on the device as you would expect. And I can choose various different types of media to go into this top section. So again, the system dialog asks if I want permission to use the camera. I'm going to take a photo there. I'll just take a photo of my Mac screen just so you can see the camera in action. That's the photo inserted at the top there, or I could choose to replace that with a signature, for example. So here's the signature component. I'll just pop my name in there. There we go. I can also record audio. Again, I ask for permission to access the audio recording, and I can take a little recording here. It inserts that into their media. Or I can choose to take a photo and a barcode. So let me just take a picture of this little barcode here, and it will insert that together with the image. So that's all working pretty much as you would expect. You can see it's updated the image in the detail view list. I can choose to check out this component. So I will check it out to myself here. Keyboard pops up and disappears just as it should. And if I go back to the list of apps now, components now, you can see that it has separated it into checked out and not checked out. You can change the filter to move between those two different views as well. We also support printing now, so if I go and choose the depreciation report, you can save as a PDF or choose from a list of printers, and that's the system standard print preview dialog that you see on the screen there. Or I can choose to email one of these components. If I go in and press the email button, I'll choose my standard mail program here, and you can see it's opened it up with the details, and if I just hide the keyboard, you can see the image there of the screenshot from that item. So a very good looking app, performing as expected, looking absolutely spot on. All the little features, I can even rotate it there, which I allowed, if you remember, in the permissions just a moment ago, and I can rotate it in the detail view as well. So that's the app now running in LCFM native. Well, I hope you enjoyed seeing the app running on the device. Here's a recap of what's new in Ben Lui. Completely redesigned app building experience with lots of help along the way. The new fast start mode with no need to install any additional software. You can have your app onto a device within a couple of minutes of starting your LCFM trial. The new feature report showing you everything that's working and anything that's still to come in your app. There have been hundreds of bug fixes and features since our last release. And we've also done quite a number of performance improvements. Sync is many times faster, particularly on large complex solutions. It's pretty much near real time and is a great experience now. We've also been able to have the recommended device spec by improving things like the graphic performance and loading performance and a whole variety of other performance areas. And we now have the public beta with the free 7-day trial for you to go and download right away. So the message really is that it is time to get started with LCFM. Unlike our previous betas, we are advising you now that if your app works, you can go ahead and ship it. This beta build, which is now public, has been tested to a really high standard. It's been fully regression tested. And we'd like you to think of it a bit more like a Google extended beta. We now have large, complex, and sophisticated client apps that are shipping. They're working perfectly. They're running every day. They include things like online and offline sync, OS access, a whole variety of features, and the customers are really very satisfied with those. So now is definitely the time to get on board and start to get your app ready to ship with LCFM native. I'm going to talk about the 3 different ways that you can do that. And the second one of these, the App Partner Service, is brand new. We haven't even got this up on the website. You hear about it in this webinar for the very first time. So let's compare these 3 different methods. We have do-it-yourself, which is building the native app using the tool yourself. We have our brand new App Partner Service, which is where you can work with us throughout development to deliver an outstanding experience. And in fact, we've been doing this service without kind of giving it a name for quite a while, which is why we think it's a good idea to launch it a bit more widely. And then we have the Android App Build Service, where we build and test your native app. So to compare each one of these different processes, and build it yourself, you're going to download the trial, compile, and build yourself. In the App Partner Service, you are still compiling and building the app yourself. But we do ask you to send us your feature report and to talk about any areas where there are any features missing or where you need performance improved or where you maybe need a little tweak. And we'll work with you to make sure that those things get covered. And in the Android build service, it's a service where you don't even need to install the platform if you don't want to. You can simply send us your FMP12 and we'll take care of the whole thing. The do-it-yourself service, we supply support by email. The partner service will give you support by email, Slack if that's your preferred mode, and Zoom, for example, doing an onboarding call or talking through best practices. And this is really to make sure that as you design and build that app, you're taking into account the things that you need to think about to do a really good job for shipping for LCFM native. And in the build service, we'll give you support by email and Slack. A typical timescale, we're seeing apps coming out in about sort of 2 to 4 weeks after you go down the compile and build yourself route, if the app's relatively finished and doesn't need a lot of testing. It really does just depend on your timescale and how long it takes you to test the app on the new platform. Partner service, we like to work with you really as early on in the project as possible, and it depends very much on your timescale and how long it takes for you to build that app. But we typically see an app in FileMaker getting built in 3 to 6 months. And by working with us from the very start, we can make sure that we set your expectations, and that if there are any design decisions that need to be made, for example, to make sure that the app works well with the online-offline syncing model, or might have to work on specific Android device resolutions, or those kind of issues, we can work with you to make sure that your app works and is designed in the right way from the start. And in the Android build service, typically also 1 to 3 month turnaround. It really depends on how busy we are and whether there are any things that we need to tweak in your app in order to make it work perfectly. In the do-it-yourself, we currently support 88% of the FileMaker feature set. In the app partner service, we can support the entire feature set in either of the services, because if there's something missing, then we can simply add it. Do bug fixing in our timetable and as a priority in the 2 services. And performance is what you get in the do-it-yourself service. But if there are specific performance optimizations that you need in either the app partner service or the build service, then we can look at those and do those. And again, if we can work with you with a bit of lead time or a bit of notice, then it means that we can ensure that by the time you want to get that app out the door, we have made any of those changes. What we really recommend against waiting until the last minute and being 2 weeks away from wanting to ship an app and then coming to us. And it's really very similar. If you were building this app for WebDirect, or you were building a version for Go and you were building a version for desktop, you take the time out early on to think about the design decisions that you need to make, whether you need to change any layout, whether you need to tweak things. And LCFM is another platform, and it's not necessarily harder than making separate layouts for WebDirect or tweaking your solution for Go, but it does require a little bit of thought and a little bit of knowledge. And if we can work with you early on, then we can make sure that you get the success that you're looking for in the timescale that your client needs. To do the sync modifications to your app, you do it yourself. In the do-it-yourself model, we have lessons on how to do it. In the partner service, then we'll talk you through all of that in your onboarding call. And in the build service, we'll either tell you how to do it or we'll do it for you, depending on the level of service that you're taking. For custom libraries and APIs, we can add these optionally in either of the services. So just to give you an example of that, we very recently had a client who needed the location tracking to be sent whenever the device changed. So at the moment, in FileMaker, you have to poll for location, but this app would work much better if a notification was sent whenever the device moved. So we added that feature so that you could get a notification whenever the device changed location. App Store submission is very much do-it-yourself in both the do-it-yourself model and in the partner model. So the partner service, we're not taking your app. You continue to have the FMP12. Obviously we might ask you to send specific little snippets from it if there's a specific issue that you want us to look at, but fundamentally this is us supporting you to do the whole process yourself. In the build service, we can do the whole App Store submission for an additional fee. The iOS App Store is harder and takes longer than the Google Play Store, so the Mac App Store is a bit closer to the iOS App Store, so it's important just to give enough time if you have an App Store submission that you need. Again, don't leave it to the last minute. You can iterate yourself in both the do-it-yourself and the partner service, and obviously after project completion with the build service. And in the do-it-yourself service, we deliver a native app. In the partner service, we deliver the knowledge and modifications that you need to the tool. So the idea is that you can continue to iterate and have essentially a self-service project, but with everything working and performing perfectly. And in the build service, we deliver the app and any modifications to the tool, so you can go and build any future apps yourself from a working project folder. Device testing, do it yourself, and the first 2, and it's included in the build service. And we have a range of Android devices here that we use for testing, and a QA team that are very experienced in testing these apps. So we can save you quite a lot of time if you need to do that. So do it yourself is really suitable for simple apps. Roughly 70% or so of the apps we're seeing now are compiling to the point where they're good enough quality, we would say now, to ship. And that's really a function of the percent complete that the platform is. But for complex apps, there's usually a screen or two, or a feature, or something that needs tweaked, or maybe a little piece of performance improvement, or something that's still needed at this stage. So get in touch with us as early as possible in the process, and we'll make sure that whatever you need is done in time for your timeline. And the build service is really for any app. It might be for a simple app, but you just don't want to go to the trouble of installing the tool and learning how to build an app. But also it's very suitable for more complex apps as well. So the pricing is now up on our website. You can just go into the pricing page and you can try out different user size numbers and different concurrent online and offline pricing models. But it starts at $299 a year. That's a new slight reduction in price from what we were advertising previously, just to make it easier for you to get started. And then we have a per user per year price on top of that. The App Partner Service and the Android Build Service are currently being given away as essentially free services with the purchase of your user pack. And the minimum spend does apply, and that minimum spend will be a function of how complex your app is and how large your user pack is. But typically we take a proportion of the user pack up front, and then you pay the remainder of the balance on your user pack only when your app is ready to ship. And your subscription for that user pack doesn't start until the actual app shipping date. So you have time to build and develop, but your annual subscription doesn't start until your customers actually, or your client actually has the app. And those services are both free during the beta. Obviously, a minimum spend does apply, which depends somewhat on the complexity of what we may need to do for you. But that is something that we'll be looking to charge an additional fee for. So when the beta program is over. So this is a really good time to get on board, get in touch, and become an app partner or work with us on the build service. Going to move on now and talk about customer success. I'd like to introduce a successful LCFM customer. Stephen Benefit is based in Australia, and he's been working on the drug guide for IT. He very kindly agreed to be interviewed, and Heather from our customer services team has recorded this Zoom interview with him.
Hi.
Hi there.
I'm here with Stephen Bennett from IET Software. Is that how you pronounce it?
IT.
Oh, IT. I'm so sorry.
That's good. Okay.
I've been mispronouncing you all this time. So he has very kindly agreed to discuss his recent LCFM native project with us. So Stephen, can you tell me a little bit about the project and what we...
Okay, the project started out in actually quite some time ago in 2016, where I was approached by a publishing company in Australia, Black Book Inks, and this is the book that we're talking about.
That's the original.
It is a massive tome, and the publisher of that book and the writer they've sold around about 350,000 copies here in Australia. So it's been a very successful book, but they wanted to get it out into the wider world. Mm-hmm. And they approached myself initially just to do a Go app. Right. And so what we had to do is work with the publishers to take the publishing files and convert them into a format that we could actually get into a database that we could make searchable. And obviously being a FileMaker developer, that was a relatively, not straightforward, but a task that was achieved relatively quickly. And once we got it into that, we then used at that stage Swift to convert it and put it on the App Store. So that was in 2016, and we had some success at that stage, but we obviously knew we needed to get into Android.
Yeah.
And we'd been discussing for some time with Marmalade. I'm not sure if you know Marmalade software, which started actually in the UK and then ended up in, I think it was Hong Kong or Singapore owned. And they were creating a cross-platform piece of software, and mainly for gaming and other stuff, but they never achieved it. They actually closed it down in 2018.
Oh, right. That would be why I haven't heard of them then. Probably.
No, they've gone now, and we've tried a couple of others along the way, and nothing's been successful. And
right. Right.
Jonathan eventually took it off the App Store because he was writing a new version based on top 300 drugs. And based on that, he decided we had to go into Android as well because of the American market so big. There's over 3 million nurses alone, and that's one of our markets. So, and the beauty of this thing is it's now based on research out of the United States as well, so that the listings are all very current. The person who writes the listing updates it every 12 months. So we know what the top drugs are, but we had all the drug details and information. So we contemplated going across and talking to other people to do the work, and he didn't want to do that because of the copyright. And so he wanted me to figure out a way of doing it. Now, having said that, I didn't want to learn how to write in Android, to be honest.
I totally sympathize. I wouldn't like to do it either.
No, and particularly as I've been working in just HTML and basic platforms and FileMaker for so long. I mean, I started in FileMaker 2. So back in the days when it was Claris, and then it went to FileMaker, and now it's back again. So it's been a long time since I've been working with the platform. So, and then based upon that, we just proceeded forwards. And so we have the new version. And where we're at now is that I was lucky enough in a Google search to stumble on you guys.
Okay. When was that? When did you come across it?
I think it was, must have been 18 months ago now. It was a pretty early version that we started working with. And I think in the first part, you allowed me to come in and use some of the early development stuff. So it's been quite some time, and the changes have obviously been quite dramatic over that period.
Why did you pick LCFM? I mean, what were the criteria that?
Well, the major criteria was what you did work with a FileMaker-based database to start with, so that made life really easy for me. And honestly, in all the searching I'm still doing now, I'm looking around, I can't find anything else that does anything even close to what you're doing without having to have some knowledge of software on that side of the software on the Android platform. And it is just such a great product to use. So, well, the other major benefit too is that from the first time we started, the first version, the first draft that we put in with you guys, it has changed by the author, by Jonathan, probably 30 or 40 times since then.
Right.
So if I was working on anything else, getting those changes into the software would have been absolutely diabolical.
Right.
So because we're hosting the actual source files, we have two source files. One is we call iOS and one we call Android. Jonathan accesses those via FMP host, which which also hosts out of London, I believe, but we're hosting out of Sydney. So he just logs in there and makes any changes he needs in the back end.
Right.
And then I take those files down and actually convert them across.
Yeah.
So I think by now I've probably run this up maybe 150, 200 times through the system in both versions.
Right.
So, and sometimes I get it right. But now with the new version, there's no chance I'm getting it wrong. It's, I think it's called Ben Lui, is it?
Ben Lui, yes.
Yep.
So.
I mean, this new version is just so simple to use that as long as you can turn on a computer, I think you could virtually convert an existing file that you have across.
Well, that is the idea. That's what we're aiming for. So it's very nice to hear you think we got there.
I mean, what I was quite surprised when I tested this latest version, because obviously the previous version I was using, you had to build your own, make the integration database, rename it, rehost it, do all those things, delete the previous files, all that. That is now just totally automated. And from what it was taking me roughly an hour and a bit to do each version, it's now probably taking me no more than 20 minutes to go completely from FileMaker to an Android app.
Well, that's really
and that's with all the data that we hold in there, because there's quite a bit of data in the file, obviously.
I mean, obviously this is an App Store app, and it's also it's what we'd call an offline app, so it's not directly syncing back.
Correct. Yes, we're not syncing back because the information in it is proprietary, and we don't want anyone to mess with it. It is an offline app, right? Having said that, I have two other apps that I'm currently working on that will be online apps. which we're looking at putting through you guys obviously at the same time. So
awesome. I was coming to that. I was going to say, so would you choose us for another project? Evidently the answer is yes.
The answer is totally yes, because the feedback that I've had in dealing with you has just been so good. I mean, every time I have a problem, the answers are solved. I mean, obviously I log them sometimes, midnight our time here. By the time I wake up tomorrow, I usually have my answers waiting for me, or a solution, or at least know that something's coming. Yeah. And I've never dealt with another software company that has been able to deliver that sort of level of service to me. So obviously there's no desire for me to go anywhere else.
Is there any drawbacks to working with LCFM? Did you find?
No, none. I mean, the major drawback. You guys have obviously been working on something for quite some time, and it's taken to get to where we are at Ben Lui. As I said, for me, has been exposure, I think, about 18 months. Yeah. Obviously, you've been working on it much longer than that. So the timeline, obviously, for you guys is very long to get to a point where you've got a great product to launch. But I think you're at that point now. And the thing is, too, working with you, that we had the problems with the fonts, and we were able to resolve that eventually, knowing that there are only certain fonts that can be supported on Android phones. So we got around all those things. The other thing it's taught me as well in dealing with you guys is that my coding has got a lot simpler. So a lot of the things that I might have put in to my original version have now come out because I don't need them. So the coding has probably come down to maybe 60% of what it originally started out as. And that's not because you guys aren't supporting it. It's just that it was superfluous coding based on Go or FileMaker or what I'd build through that sort of application. Yeah.
Yes, because you're not just deploying to Android now. I notice you're also deploying this app to iOS through LCFM.
Correct. So. Yes. Yeah. Actually, in the last hour or so, I've actually just put up a version for them to approve.
Oh well.
So hopefully we'll get that approved, and then hopefully tomorrow, if Jonathan signs off the final changes he's made to Android, we'll put that up on Android tomorrow and hopefully get that approved as well to go into the store.
Well, that's great. I mean, really nice to talk to you. And as I say, I'm looking forward to working with you on this latest project. So,
yes. Well, it'll be new for you. It's a client I've had for almost 20 years. So, so they've been around. And there's, as I said, there's two projects. There's another one coming up as well, which is to do with Google searches. So that's a recommendations piece of app. So that's also in testing at the moment. So look forward to progressing that one.
Thanks very much to Stephen for taking the time to do that interview. I hope you all found that useful. We now have the prize drawing for the Samsung Galaxy Tab S6. Now, this is only applicable to those watching this webinar live. If you're watching the recording or you don't win today, then stay tuned for another opportunity to win one of these fabulous tablets at the end of this recording. A link will now be appearing on your screen in the chat box next to this webinar. Please go and fill out the short form in order to be entered. I will come back at the very end of this entire webinar and tell you who has won. The link is only going to be up for 5 minutes, so go now and do it in order to be entered. I'd like to touch briefly on what's next for LCFM Native. We have the remaining 12% of the feature set to support. We will also be adding support for large data sets. LCFM Ben Lui is currently fine up to a few hundred megabytes, but not suitable for gigabytes of data just yet. And some of you have quite successfully separated things out so that the gigabytes of data stay on the server and you have a much lighter weight client app. And we're not sure that you would ever really want to install something that's so large onto a device. But there are some cases we've seen, particularly on the desktop. So we are adding support for this just shortly. Another thing that's coming up just shortly is support for incremental compiles or builds of the app. This is particularly important for larger apps. It will mean that you have the option to iterate and to get a new build on the device inside of a minute or two rather than waiting a long time if the app is huge. Smaller apps are already compiling quite quickly, but larger ones can take a few minutes. And whilst that's going to be always the case for the initial compile. We can get that subsequent rebuild process down to being quite fast. It'll mean that you get that ability to just keep making changes to your app in the same way that you're used to, or almost the same way as already exists in FileMaker. There are some further performance improvements and bug fixes that are coming. There's been a lot actually that has come into this build already. Sync is up to an order of magnitude faster on large scale solutions, and is working really well on some large scale solutions that we have now out and shipping. Graphic performance has been improved. There's been a whole variety of optimizations gone in, and in fact we've been able to halve the device spec, as I said earlier, for what we recommend for LCFM native. But there are more performance improvements coming, and of course if you work with us on either the app partner service or the build service, then we can put in some custom performance improvements that specifically suit your solution, or optimize those aspects of your solution that need optimized before we do other improvements. There are some more bug fixes coming, and last but by no means least, I would like to give you a preview of our web deployment option. So this is a sneak peek of web deployment in LCFM native. Let me just switch over to Safari with this. So this differs from WebDirect in that it will give you access to native device features. Anything that you can hook into in the browser will let you do. It'll be very fully featured in terms of richly supporting the features in FileMaker. But by using the data API, our web solution will scale a lot better than WebDirect, because it will allow a much larger number of connections back to the FileMaker server. And most importantly, these web apps will work using the same online and offline sync model. And that's really because our entire web experience is running locally. It's running client-side in the browser. So your app has been translated into a full JavaScript app running in the browser. And that means that any modifications that you make to allow your apps to sync for Android will also work once we have the web deployment available. And what I'm showing you on the screen is it's an experimental alpha version. So it really is not quite ready for prime time at the moment. But it is worth saying that it is not faked in any way. It's been built with our prototype web compiler product. And so as our desktop and native mobile solutions become more mature, this is also going to automatically improve because it uses the same underlying compiler technology. So you can see this is the FileMaker sample events app. It's running in a browser. You can see it essentially do exactly what you would expect it to do, even at this relatively early stage. It has a whole variety of features that have been included and are actually working. So it is not available today. If you are interested in it though, then please let us know. I think we'll just pop up a quick poll in the webinar where you can just let us know if this is something that you are going to be interested in as it develops. Okay, that brings me to the end of the presentation portion of this webinar, and we're now going to switch over to the live stream to take your questions. And remember to stay tuned throughout this, because at the very end we're going to come and do the drawing and let you know who has won that fabulous Samsung tablet.
Okay, are we all back?
We do appear to be back.
Excellent. Right, well, we've got loads of questions here. Loads of questions. Let's go back and see where we start. So I'm going to start with Ben McGraw. Does LCFM run locally? Kevin, do you want to field that one?
Yes, very happy to field that one. So it does run locally in the sense that it is working with FileMaker on your local machine to do the data extraction. So the whole process of building an app is running just on your computer. However, it also runs online and syncs data back to FileMaker server if you need it to. So in that sense, it doesn't run locally at all. The apps can stay with all the data hosted in FileMaker, and in fact, you can have a Go app on iOS running in FileMaker, desktop Windows app, and a LCFM native Android app, and they will all keep the data in sync.
Cool. I hope that answers your question. That was Ben McGraw. So Tim is asking, do you support encrypted solutions? I think that might be a Mark question.
So for compiling an app, like building it with a tool, you need to turn encryption at rest off. Otherwise, we can't extract the data, and getting the DDRs out is a bit of a pain. However, if you've got a syncing app, then you can have EAR turned on the server. So as all the apps are compiled, there's no solution left when it's running natively natively in a native app. So there's nothing left for your solution for somebody else to access or anything. So we support them at runtime in the sense that the solution on the server could be encryption at rest, but we don't support it when compiling locally from a solution, like building the app.
Okay, thank you for that.
Which happens when there's an internet connection, when changes happen locally or remotely, or you can use perform script on server to perform scripts in remote solutions. You can't do quite the same thing as you can with FM Go, where you can have a mixture of solutions hosted online and also locally on the device.
Okay, I hope that was what you wanted to know, John. And now we have a different John, John with an H, so asking, a standalone app's not the primary reason I need FM on Android. Any app I would create would need to connect to FM server as I do with FM Go.
Yes, it does do that, John. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, no problem with that at all.
Okay. Ian Osrin is asking, what's the maximum recommended size of an app? This is a how long's a piece of string question.
I'm going to let Mark take that one.
So there's a couple things. If you want to submit an app to the App Store, the iOS and Android app stores do have limits on the size of an app you can actually upload. I think iOS, it's around 200 megabytes. I think for Google Play, it was 100 megabytes. They might have raised that a bit. So there's a limit there in terms of the app you actually distribute. Now, if you're not distributing to app stores, then we've had a customer recently successfully managed to work with a client to use a 1 gigabyte APK, which had substantial amounts of movies in it, and that worked fine on a higher end device with lots of memory and lots of storage space. But that was being deployed locally, not via an app store. So in general, you probably want to keep your APKs, all the design data, the layout, scripts, and everything else. They take up virtually no space at all after they've been compiled. So the rest of a solution size is usually 50% data and 50% indices. So you can pretty much have really, really large apps. It's the data size that really matters. And the other thing, we're also working on a feature to make it so that container data is downloaded when it's needed rather than in advance. And that should help a number of solutions we've seen where they have lots of containers which are not actually touched very often. They're just used to display an image on a layout or something like that.
Okay, that seems a pretty comprehensive answer there. So who's next? So Ben McGraw again is asking, would the completed solution be ready to put on Google Play? So,
yes, absolutely, as well as on the Mac App Store and the iOS App Store.
Yeah.
So they spit out APKs which can be uploaded directly to Google Play Store after you set up an account and provided various details about it. And similarly, we do the same thing for iOS as well, the iOS App Store.
Yeah. Yeah. So John asked, why is the do-it-yourself service only supporting 88% of FileMaker features? Do you want to explain that one, Kevin?
Yeah, so that's simply the percentage of features that we've currently implemented in LCFM so far. And as I mentioned towards the end of the webinar, we will be adding support for the final 12% just in the coming weeks and months. But the build service and the app partner service obviously allow us to add any specific feature that might be missing that's needed for your app. It just means that you jump to the head of the queue, basically. But it is all coming.
Sure. Who's next? What version of Android does this support? And what about supporting different Android device form factors?
So I think we currently recommend targeting Android 8 and above, but it will work on slightly older devices. Of course, the problem here is as time goes by, older Android devices become less usable because they won't get security updates and things like that. So I would generally recommend Android solutions to Android. They can come in all kinds of screen aspect ratios. So having layouts that flex is usually much better than trying to design for a fixed size. But in principle, yeah, you can use scripts to go to specialized layouts depending on the aspect ratio or kind of whether it's landscape and portrait and things like that.
Yeah, very good, thank you. Okay. Nguyen, I'm not good at this one. Nguyen is asking, my solution has a lot of script calculation fields, validations. I also use ODBC to get data from SQL Server and Oracle. How would I use LCFM?
I think the script calculations, fields, and validations should all be fine. Do we support ODBC as yet?
We don't currently support ODBC, no. However, given that the data tends to flow through FileMaker Server, it might be possible to set it up so FileMaker Server does the connection to ODBC and it just gets transmitted to the client app using LCFM native. It would depend on the exact structure of your solution.
Yeah, I think the best thing for you to do is to get in touch with us. You probably want to use one of the services, probably the app partner service, and we can probably help you out with that. But it'll probably just need a bit of configuration and a little bit of thought for us just to get over that hurdle.
Yeah, big on that one. Okay.
And then obviously you can buy additional users on top of that.
Okay. Okay, so Jason has asked, can we change layout themes in your app, or does our theme auto transfer?
Yeah, so we fully support FileMaker theming. We've implemented it using CSS in the same way as FileMaker has under the hood. So all the standard FileMaker themes that there work, and as should any custom ones, because it is possible if you poke around to import your own CSS themes inside FileMaker Pro, they should work as well.
Cool, great. That was the last one. So Ian is having problems understanding the pricing structure. Sounds like one for Kevin.
Okay, so I'm not sure if you've got a really specific question, feel free to put it in, but just to give you an overview, it's an initial purchase of 5 users, which is $299. And then you buy additional users on top. And there's 3 types of additional user that you buy. Either it's a named user, which is for a user that's going to connect back to FileMaker Server, or it's a concurrent user, which is a user who is going to connect back to FileMaker Server but isn't necessarily named. So that's more suitable for occasional users of your app rather than a specific group. Or it can be an offline app which doesn't connect back to FileMaker. So named user pricing is, or concurrent pricing rather, is 3 times the price of a named user. And offline pricing is less expensive than either of those. But you can go onto the pricing page and you can play around with the various different numbers on the website. If you go onto our website and go to pricing, there's a little tool there to just let you. Does that work?
I'm still putting people into the hat for the prize draw. So if we could talk just a few more minutes.
Okay. Yep. No problem. Yeah. Okay. We'll come back to that in just a couple of minutes.
To make sure that everybody that should be in there is in there. So let me just do another couple of questions. Where are we? So is there any license to pay to Claris using your solution?
Okay, so the answer is that if the app is offline, so it's like a standalone app that does not connect back to FileMaker Server, then there's no license to pay to Claris at all, because it's a bit like the runtime. You're just building a deployment, and it's similar in Go, in fact, in iOS, and that there isn't a cost there to Claris either. If you're building an online app, then you're going to be connecting back to Claris Server, so you're going to need a FileMaker Server license to host your data. And we connect back using the data API. So the way that's licensed is it's licensed for the amount of data that you use rather than the number of users. So there is a cost to host your solution with Claris, but it usually works out very cost effectively. Obviously, it will depend on exactly how much data you're using.
Okay, we have a question. Can you go a bit further into import-export? I'm not really sure what he means by that.
Yeah, maybe if you could rephrase that question, Chris, we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
There's something we can send you.
Yeah. Sure. Unia Portilla is asking, there will be a free version of LCFM. I presume that's a question rather than a statement.
Nope, I'm afraid there won't be. Sorry.
Yeah. There's a free trial, though. You can
there is a 7-day free trial. Yeah.
So Ali is asking, I remember using the signature feature was a little choppy back in the first APK and collecting of pictures. Can it natively set the camera setting on an Android to small or medium, similar to how you have in FM Go?
Yes, so in terms of the latter, as far as I'm aware, we've implemented the insert from device camera script set the same as an FM, so you can set the small, medium, large option or full, and then it will produce an image of the appropriate size. So in terms of the signature, yes, I think it was a bit choppy. I think that may well have improved a bit since then. But if you do try using it, it's still not good enough for you, let us know and we'll have another look to see if we can make it better.
Sure. Good. Okay.
Heather, shall I keep going with the question so you can just get the prize draw sorted out? Because I think people are keen to get the
sure. Okay.
Apart from that. Yeah. Okay. So Brent asked a question about release date for the web version, and I'm definitely I've been around the block enough to know not to try to answer that. So I'm afraid we're not going to be answering that.
You're not answering that
one. No. So Tim asked, the web deployment would be an alternative to WebDirect. Yes, it would indeed be an alternative. That's the idea. It runs client side, so it's a lot more scalable and it'll work offline. Ali asks, does it run on a Windows machine or do we have to use an Apple machine? And that may meaning the compiler itself. Yeah, I'm afraid, Ali, that we only support compiling.
Mechanism is used by MirrorSync and is kind of recommended in the now not that easy to find document that FileMaker wrote themselves like 3 or 4 years ago. So essentially it uses primary keys and modification timestamps to check which records have changed remotely and then downloads them. And conflicts at the moment, it resolves based on server precedence, but we haven't really found many cases yet where conflicts has caused a problem. So you do have to work with some rules with your data table structure and everything for it to work with syncing. But the most solutions we've found so far have been able to be updated for syncing with a little bit of work.
Cool. John, does LTFM know when it's online and automatically adjust accordingly?
So essentially, if you mean the syncing, so what happens is the way that works is as changes are made locally and changes made remotely, the LTM native checks with the server periodically to see if anything has changed. If anything's changed locally, it will try and sync. If it can't sync at any particular point in time, it will just defer that and do it a little bit later. So it basically checks periodically when there's an internet connection. So if there is an internet connection, it will just sync immediately whenever there is changes. Otherwise, it will queue it all up and then do it when the internet connection becomes available again. You can also make sync manual as well. So you can actually make it so you can control when syncing occurs in your app. If you have a particular workflow, for example, where it doesn't need to check for data through a series of screens, it just collects all data and it needs to sync it at the end, you can then have it just sync the data at the end of that process rather than doing it continually. So you have the choice.
That's cool. So question now about which connections with the FileMaker server have the compiler. I don't quite know if I understand that question. Afterwards, yes. We will make the recording of this available after. Terry, if the app is being used offline, why are there per user costs? Can the cost be per app instead? Terry, we do essentially have a cap on the app price if the app's being used offline. So the tiers are much broader in terms of the number of users, and there is a license for unlimited use, which is essentially a license per app. That's correct.
Okay, I am pleased to announce that we do now have a winner.
Ah, very good, Heather. Would you like to... Big drum roll, please.
Yeah, so if you can provide the drum roll. The winner has only provided a first name, I'm afraid, but his name or her name is Bartek. So Bartek, if that's you, and there is only one of you I have checked, could you please send me your full name and your shipping address to heather@livecode.com, and we will arrange your Samsung Galaxy. Congratulations.
Congratulations. And if you didn't win the tablet and you want another chance to win, you'll be pleased to know that we are, in fact, going to be giving away another Samsung Galaxy S6 tab later on this month. So all you have to do is request a quote for either the build service or the app partner service, or if you're going to be doing the do-it-yourself route, send us your feature report. And we put everybody who's done that into a hat at the end of May, and the drawing will take place at the end of the month. So get your trial, try out LCFM Native, send us in that report, and you'll have another chance to win a fabulous $650 Android tablet. Okay, we've got a few more questions. Let's run through those. Ali, I was told you're going to come up with an FM Go version of LCFM Native so we don't have to compile every time, or at least for testing. Ali, this is kind of what I was referring to in terms of just making the compile process iterative. So the idea is that we get the compile process down to just a couple of minutes to push changes out onto the device. And that's about as fast as we recommend publishing to the App Store. We think that that's the best way for many types of app for you to provide the sort of customer experience that your customers would expect. Ian has a question. I have an app which occasionally links to a FileMaker 15 database using the URL command. This is not a server. Otherwise, it's standalone with it being free in the iOS App Store. How does this work, and how does it fit into the pricing structure? It should work just fine. If it's a FileMaker database, then it's an online app. If it's any other kind of database, then we classify it as an offline app because that's the way that our pricing works. Heather, you could even take over reading some of the questions if you like.
Okay, where have you got to?
I've got to Michael, so he's next.
Okay.
While users be able to move in and out of reception in the field.
In the field. So will my users be able to move in and out of reception in the field and have their data sync seamlessly with FM server or something else?
No, yeah, essentially what you said there is what the intention is. I think one of our case studies is precisely that kind of app. They've got drivers who are moving around, don't often have Wi-Fi signal, so they can basically sync the data when they've got a Wi-Fi signal. Otherwise, they can still continue to put data in and access the data they've got, and indeed still use the app, even if they're out in the field. So yes, that is one of the primary use cases of the online-offline sync.
Yeah. When will the compiler be available on Windows?
Yes, I think I've already answered that one. Hopefully at some point this year, but it's not something we're getting a lot of requests for, to be honest, I'm afraid.
Is there any limitation Core ML FileMaker 19? Does that?
So Core ML is a new feature in FileMaker 19. I think it works on Mac and FM Go. So we haven't implemented that yet. But obviously, we are planning to, over time, implement all the FileMaker feature sets. So if you get in contact with us and chat to us about it, you can try and understand your use case a bit more and see what we can do.
Brilliant. And I think, is that the end of the questions?
I think
that is everything. Yeah. Well, thank you all very much indeed for attending. A recording of this presentation will be available afterwards. And please do go and try LCFM. And remember that if you send us your feature report or request a quote for either of the two services, then we'll enter your name into a draw to win a Samsung Galaxy S6 tab. So I think that's it for the moment. Ali, I'll very quickly take your question, and you just slipped it in at the end. What would be best practice to develop an app data separation model and external table occurrences? I think the answer to that is probably yes. But data separation model is really a good way to do it. Feel absolutely free to drop us a line in support, and we can talk you through that a bit more. But that's definitely what we recommend. Okay, thank you all very much indeed. Thank you, Heather and Mark.
Thank you.
And we'll see you all again soon.
Yeah.
Bye everyone. Thanks for joining. Bye.